Dave listens to Hi-Fi. Dave listens to Hi-Fi.
Hello there, bonjour, bienvenue. Thank you for tuning in to Dave Listens to Hi-Fi. So today I want to talk about a little trick that I use. This is a little shortcut that I use that helps me to kind of retain the character and the quality of sound that I hear from one component to another. It's something I figured out on my own how to do years ago, and I'm sure that other people also use this, but I've never really heard it talked about or given a name. So I just wanted to tell you about it, give you an idea of the way that I can reliably compare components. So what I'm talking about is the ability to listen to a piece of music on one system and then change a component or change two or three components or listen to a completely different system and then reliably be able to compare the two. Now, the mechanism that some people use, it's called the echoic memory, and some people also refer to it as the auditory memory. But these are like actually two different things. There are some important differences between the two. So the echoic memory refers to the ability of your brain to remember the actual sounds that you hear. The auditory memory is more a function of your brain hearing the sounds, processing them, understanding them, committing them to memory, and then take some action afterwards. Like, when you get verbal commands or listen to a story, the ability to commit that to memory and then repeat what's happening, or follow up on some verbal commands on a series of commands that someone gives you. Do that in an order. That's your auditory memory. The echoic memory is something where the actual sounds are stored in your brain. And this is a very, very short-term thing. This lasts only about 4 seconds long. So the actual sounds, the sound and not the information transmitted by the sound, but the actual sound itself is stored in your brain. This is helpful for things like verbal speech. So if you listen to someone talking, what that is a series of syllables just kind of in a steady stream. So the echoic memory allows your brain to hear those syllables and then kind of parse them out into words, to take them and divide them into words, which is then understood as language. The echoic memory also helps you when you hear sounds, when you hear music. You can hear a series of notes together, and the echoic memory will give that time for your brain to kind of process those notes into a melody and understand what's being transmitted by the music. So that's the echoic memory, and that's a very short term. That's only a couple seconds long. The auditory memory is something, like I said, where your brain is actually processing the sound, and this more refers to language and understanding like that, where you hear the sounds, you understand the information being transmitted by the sounds, and then you commit that to your short-term memory. And so it's the ability to use your ears to retain information that's being given over sound. So there's some subtle differences between the two, but the echoic memory, if you're using that to evaluate components, what you'd need like an A/B switch box or something to switch the sounds very quickly from one to the other. Now what that would do is you would hear the immediate little differences. So that's one way that you can kind of pick up easily on the sound, on the differences on something. But long-term listening, you really get a better idea of the character of the sound, of more nuances, and the ability to really get the sound of a component across a wide variety and genres of music. So you can have a more complete understanding of it. And then by using this trick that I'm going to talk about, you can compare that whole sound more reliably to something else. So the way that I do it, I'm using more the auditory memory to evaluate components. And I'll do this with a visual representation that'll help you understand what I'm talking about here. I'm going to show you two pictures. So here's the first picture. You can look at the picture, look at the things in the picture, kind of make your observations about it. That's what you're looking at. And then if I take it down, and then we wait some little time here, and then I show you another picture. You can look at the second picture and say, oh, what are the differences? An important thing to mention is bias. If I tell you that there are differences in between these two photos, you're more likely to find differences even if they're not there. If I tell you that the photos are identical, or if you believe they're identical, you're going to look at them and you're probably going to overlook any differences that might be there. So there is a definite bias. But even using this thing that I'm going to show you will allow you to go beyond those biases by making specific observations. So did you notice the difference between the two pictures? There is one subtle difference. They were taken at two different times, so the angle may be a little bit off, but we're looking at the same things. But one thing did change in the picture. We'll put up the first one again. Look at the handles on the cups. See, you notice in this picture they're touching. Now, if I look at the second picture, you can see the handles on the cup, there's a little gap between them. Now, as you observe the picture, as you observe the first picture, look at the handles on the cup. Make a specific observation about that. And notice that the handles are together, and kind of imagine what the sound of cups coming together would sound like, or the feel of sliding those two cups together so the handles are touching. And then you look at the second picture, and you see there's a little gap between them. Is that gap big enough for a piece of paper or a pencil? Imagine yourself putting something between the handles. And when you're doing that, you're telling yourself a little story about the handles, about the cups, about the movement, about the gap in between the handles. So as you tell yourself these stories about the handles on the cups, and you're tapping into the human brain's superpower, which is the ability to retain information through stories. Now, human beings have telling each other stories for millennia. One way that the human race has been able to progress and evolve the way it has. Each generation didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We told each other stories about wheels and healing plants and architecture and quantum physics. And that way, the human race is able to build upon the wisdom and the knowledge of previous generations to move forward. And so when you make those associations through stories in your brain, you can retain that information, and you can really reliably transmit very detailed information from one person to the next, or just retain that information for long term. Now, if I was to tell you about the handles on the cups, and you look at the two photos, next week, next month, even for a long time very down the line, and I ask you about the cups, were the handles touching or not, and you'll be able to reliably say, yes, they were actually touching or they weren't. And then if you were to look at another picture a while later, and of the same thing with cups like that, you make the observation about the handles and you say, yes, they're touching, no, they're not. So this is the ability of stories to really implant and to allow you to retain this information. Educators and TED Talk presenters have known about stories for a long time, and this is how we can use this observation to retain and make these comparisons. So when I listen to music, I make specific observations about it. In the sound stage, is the tambourine in front of or behind the background singers? How does the note of the piano react with the guitar playing the same note? Do I hear the intermodulation? There's a specific song that I listen to where there's a real drum set and drum machine playing. And they're playing kind of a cymbal sound at the same time, exactly the same time for a short while. And on a resolving system, I can hear those two things. I can hear the drum machine, and I can hear the real cymbals. They're playing at the same time, but they occupy different spaces in the soundstage, and you can hear the rich harmonics of each one as just two separate things. On a system that's less resolving, it kind of comes across as just one sound. And so if I play that piece of music on whatever system I'm listening to, I can listen for that specific thing. Do I hear the two sounds? Does it come across as one sound? And this is one way that I'm reliably able to tell that. And then if you go a little further and you say, okay, that's this component, this system that I'm listening to, it's all one sound. You make those associations with that component, that this is what it sounds like. You kind of make those inferences into your brain, and then when I play something else, I can think about this first component. I can say, oh yeah, that's what that sounded like. That's what that made that drum beat sound like. And then I can compare it to something else. So this is kind of the trick that I use, and it really helps me when I plug something in. I can play specific pieces of music, make these really specific observations, like the decay of a note that happens just before a chorus, you know, a piano note or something. I hear it decay in the soundstage. At the chorus, this vocalist starts singing. I can make a specific observation. Does the note decay? Do I still hear it when the person starts singing? And then when I play something else that doesn't maybe resolve decay as well, I stop hearing the decay before the person sings. And then on another component, maybe that decay will last longer and I'll hear it still while the person starts singing. So specific things like that really help you to make those observations and then really give a character of a sound to a component that you can then compare reliably to something else. And this even transcends bias, because I mean, you could be listening for something specific, but if I know exactly what I'm listening for in each song, that really helps me to make a, not even a subjective, it's really an objective observation about what I'm hearing. When I make those observations, when I'm evaluating a component, I'll come and I'll write down and I'll put all my notes. By thinking about it, making those observations, and then writing them down, it really helps me commit it to memory and helps me to really remember the character of a component. So that's how I can listen and kind of give you my observations of a component and what I think it sounds like. I do have to say that these are my observations. This is what I'm hearing. My ears and the way I hear things is maybe not the same as yours. So maybe you won't be able to hear these same things about the component, and certainly you'll have different likes and dislikes from me. But you know, I can only tell you what I think. My job here is to tell you what I think and make these observations and tell these stories, and hopefully it's entertaining for you. Hopefully it's useful. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you also do. If this is a new concept to you, let me know as well. I love to read and hear all of your comments. Thank you for tuning in to Dave Listens to Hi-Fi. I've got another review on an amplifier coming up shortly. I have the ability on YouTube now to accept donations. I think buy me a coffee or super thanks or something. So check down below if you want to contribute to the channel, help me do what I do here. I'm not making any money from this. I'm not taking any sponsorships. I'm not biased by anyone. This is all just me telling you exactly what I think about all these components. That's why I like to do kind of used components from time to time, because I buy my components used, and you know, the older stuff you don't really see a lot of reviews on. And mostly people are doing reviews on the brand newest thing that comes out. You know, the manufacturers get it out almost as advertising, and people are reviewing them. So I like to look at the stuff that's maybe a little bit off the side and isn't reviewed as much, and kind of give my own perspective on things. So thanks again for watching. Talk to you later.